PNC, America's Black News Channel. Watch us on all major cable providers and major streaming platforms. Finally, news that speaks to us.
Joining me now to discuss the hearings further is the activist, attorney, and political strategist, Angelo Pinto. Angelo, welcome back to Black News Tonight. Always good to see you, my brother. In the hearings today, we saw a range of lines of questioning, interrogations, even attacks. And to no one's surprise, it came mainly from largely Republican senators. First of all, was your sense that the line of questioning that she received was unfair?
Of course. I mean, I think when I think about, Supreme Court justices that have been put forth by the Democratic Party, they traditionally are going to receive, some questions that folks think are unfair. They're traditionally going to be put through the ringer. I think particularly if you're a black justice and particularly if you're a black woman, which we've never had, as Judge Brown is kind of showing the world now, she's going to be treated unfairly. She's going to be put through the ringer. Everything she's done is going to be questioned. Ironically and interestingly enough, as many folks are talking about around the country, particularly black folks, she's more qualified than any of the sitting judges right now. She's an Ivy League student. She's clerked for Supreme Court. She's been a judge herself for numerous years. So her track record is expansive, is robust, and many will say more robust than most of the sitting justices, but yet she's going to be put through the ringer. One thing I'll say is that the Republican Party does this. This is what they do. It's not a surprise. It's unfortunate, but it's what should be expected.
How about the Democrats who engaged Judge Jackson? For example, we saw Senator Cory Booker referencing her grandparents and then asking her to sort of describe the values that she got from them. Some might say softballs from the Democrats, low blows from the Republicans. Is that a fair assessment? Do you think Democrats were doing the right thing here?
I think the Democrats are trying to get it confirmed. And they're trying to paint a picture of her as being neutral. They're trying to paint a picture of her of having American values and paint this picture that she isn't a threat to the Republican Party or American values, which I think a lot of folks, myself included, don't agree with. But I understand that is their tactic and their thought process around what is going to get her confirmed. I would like to see them not play that game at times, and I'd like to see them not play that game in this moment. And just use her track record, talk about her accomplishments, what she stands for as a way to move things forward, and not attempt to kind of placate the Republican Party. But unfortunately, this has also been a tactic we've seen time and time again by the Democratic Party to, I guess, play nice, for a lack of a better word. Does it work? Is it going to stop her from being kind of put to the test? Of course it won't. But I think the Democrats think it's a sound strategy. I think many folks watching do not.
So let's talk about some of the stuff coming from Republicans. What's your take, first of all, on what they're arguing? We've seen Senator Cruz, also Senator Hawley, come with the claim that she has been soft, not just on crime, right, which is a consistent critique of Democrats, whether it's legislators or jurists, but that she's been soft on child pornography, child predation, that she's somehow bailing out people from having large sentences and basically giving them a slap on the wrist. What do you say to that?
I say that this is essentially the rhetoric that you hear from the Republican Party around a variety of things. I think whenever you find someone who isn't a Republican, who doesn't tout being tough on crime and use some of the draconian policies as the way that the Republican Party would like them to see, they're going to be put out and kind of labeled as being soft on crime. And I think that's what we see here. Even though she has a track record of being a judge and being fairly neutral, doing the right thing. I think the Republican Party, this is kind of their card that they always go to when opposing the Democratic nominees and also just opposing, the Democrats generally, that they're soft on crime and they're not going to look at the criminal justice system and sentencing and policing and law enforcement in the same way that the Republican Party does, which they shouldn't. But the other interesting piece that I saw Cory Booker talk about this idea that, she has gotten recommendation letters from Noble, from the FOP, and a variety of law enforcement groups, which also speaks to the fact that law enforcement, in fact, believes that she's not only qualified, but she isn't breaking the law, she isn't soft on crime, but she's actually enforcing the law in a way that they see fit as well.
Absolutely, and it's important to be very clear here. When we look at the cases that Ketanji Brown Jackson has overseen, where they say, well, the sentence was this and she only gave that. First of all, as she said in her own remarks, part of this is a response to the sentencing recommendations, right? The prosecutors are often not asking for very much. The guidelines could say 20 to 50 years. And in one case, the defense asked for 1 day and the prosecution only asked for a few years. And so her determination was honestly in the middle between what the two people were asking. Let's also be clear. 5 of the 9 cases where she was asked to make a decision were cases where the prosecution also was going beneath the sentencing guidelines. So nobody was expecting these to be the sentencing guidelines. It's also important to understand the context of these laws. These laws were created before the age of the internet, before the age of downloads, before people could access technology in very particular ways. And so, yes, a person in 1980 that's accessing child pornography, these laws were created for people who were engaged in the act, who were physically endangering children, who were doing all of these things that were awful. And they still are awful. Some of the people who are doing these awful, disgusting things today aren't doing all of the things that were included before, and yet the laws have not changed with the technology. So again, this isn't to say that she's being softer on the same criminals. She's saying that there are different types of circumstances, different types of criminals that nobody's disputing. Not the judge, not the jury, not the prosecutor, not the defense, not the experts. And then suddenly these Republican senators come on in the 12th hour to say you've done something wrong, Judge, not because they really believe it, but because they know that saying that someone is soft on child pornography is a drum that they can beat that nobody wants to have to try to unhear.